Hey guys, my name's Christopher Rubio. I'm one of the co-hosts here on our Modern Trust channel. I'm here with our president, Daniel Hales, who's also a accredited and established estate planning attorney. I'm also here with David Alvarado, insurance broker. So we'll just quickly go through, guys, maybe give a little background about yourselves, and we'll kind of jump into some fun topics today.
Sure, why don't you start?
All right. Well, again, David Alvarado. I've been in the insurance industry 17 years now. I have an agency of over 100 agents here in the United States and in California, mainly in Southern California. And then, we're here to learn all about what we can do to improve everybody's situation from a financial standpoint, from a employee standpoint, from a business owner standpoint, and how to be able to share that value with our listeners.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm Dan Hales. I've been an estate planning attorney for over 30 years, and that's all I do. Trusts and estates. And, when you talk about trusts and estates, it kind of involves everything, right, David? It involves
Absolutely.
Insurance. It involves everything a person can own. So whatever is important to you and your family, and whatever you can own, a tangible asset or an intangible asset, we try to protect that with proper estate planning.
Awesome.
So I'm always happy to talk about that kind of stuff. So
Yes.
we have some hot topics we want to talk about today?
So some news, what's happening in the world today. We're hearing a couple things, what's going on with Donald Trump in general. We'll also talk a little bit what's happening in the Saudi Arabia and U.S. kind of relations, and what does that mean, how to protect ourselves, and some other topics. But so Dan, maybe let's talk about what's going on with Donald Trump and if we have any thoughts from our different backgrounds and perspectives.
It's hard to talk about Donald Trump without first explaining, are you liberal or are you conservative? Because your political leanings kind of dictates how you interpret that. But without taking sides, because this is not a political show, but it's very interesting what's happening. I mean, this is the first time in United States history that an ex-president, has been indicted. And the question is, are they going to arrest him? And I think the answer is yes. And so right now his lawyers are trying to coordinate how they're going to do this handoff. And I think they have an inside deal that there's not going to be any handcuffs, because that would kind of be below the belt. I think his attorneys are trying to work out something so that he flies in, gets down to the courthouse, down to the station. They're going to indict him, but he's going to walk in with some Secret Service, and they're not going to handcuff him. And it's kind of up in the air about whether he's going to spend the night in jail or not, but he has to appear for the arraignment, and they'll go from there. But it may or may not happen, but it looks like he's actually going to get arrested.
So this is in the state of New York, and I think is this at a state level? I mean, I haven't heard too much about it, but I guess, is there federal things, or does it affect the presidency? I think those are some things that I'm hearing about.
Yeah, well, I think the consensus is that a person can serve as a president from anywhere. As long as they're, duly elected, they can even run the presidency from a jail cell if they really wanted to. There's no prohibition in the law or the Constitution that says you can't be the president of the United States serving from the state penitentiary. Now,
Wow.
that would be another first, right?
Right.
And I don't think that's going to happen. In fact, it's just hard to imagine that he would actually do any real jail time,
Right.
because of this. And of course, if you're on the liberal side, this is fantastic. Let's lock up Donald so he can't campaign. And if you're on the conservative side, this could be fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
This really galvanizes the support for Donald Trump if you feel like he's being unfairly picked on. And so it's interesting to see how it'll play out. I mean, it's a major distraction, I think, from the real problems in the world. This is my opinion.
I agree.
There are real criminals.
I agree.
There are real wars going on. There are real tax issues. And this is a sideshow that's probably being, it's important politically, I guess you could say, but it's certainly not a big deal. I mean, some people would say it's a big deal, but I think there are bigger problems to solve, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think it's part of the show. There's so much going on. There's so much uncertainty, and it's another play to get people talking about something else that's not important versus the real problems that are being hidden by the media. how many other huge problems like oil spills, chemical spills across the country, trains falling off tracks. It's never happened consistently ever. Why is that not being talked about as much? I think it's funny to see that Donald Trump's going to allow himself to get indicted and allow himself, because he literally can, I think he can swindle his way out of that. But you're talking about a misdemeanor. We're talking about a small offense, and he's going to get indicted. Now it's a big headline news. I don't know if anybody else has been on the news for such a small offense as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. I think, uncertainty, and there's a lot of uncertainty with what's going on, I think, in the country, in the world, right? And, we'll kind of lead into the Saudi Arabia thing a little later, but there's so much uncertainty. So there's also distraction. But let's say, whatever side of the fence I lean on in terms of politics, how does that impact me as just somebody living here in the United States from my job, right? And that's who you vote for in president. You're kind of thinking, hey, how does this impact me, my family life? How does this protect the assets that I have, right? Like, I know a lot of people are concerned from the real estate side about values of properties maybe declining a little bit, right? So if I'm looking to refinance my property or sell my property, maybe I was counting on $1 million and now, it's worth $900,000. That's still $100,000 of what I had, or maybe some of my other assets as 401ks, right? I was sitting at, $300,000 and now, in a few months, it could be $150,000 based on whatever, something happening to Trump or something that Biden may or may not be doing. So, it's interesting, I think, to look at from how is this going to really hit me, right? And if, let's say, whatever president is going to be there, like, how can they even run the country if that's so it's interesting. Donald can run it from a prison. Let's say that happens, but do we want that? No matter what side of the fence, right? Yeah. Like, he's still our president, or it doesn't matter who's going to be the president. But if they're restricted, I'm sure that would impact me somehow if they can't do their job. It's like kind of a boxer with one hand behind his or her back. What does he do? So whether he wins, the presidency or not, I just feel like, hey, how is this going to impact the things that I do and the income that I bring and my family, or current events like that. So I don't know. That's my thought on more uncertainty, how it just really hits me at home, regardless of my politics. I just want the best outcome for the country and for my family. So no. What are you guys thinking?
I think the other effect it has is when the public at large sees that whoever runs for president or becomes president is going to be subjected to such intense scrutiny, and in this case, crucifixion. Yeah. You have a lot of people that would be great presidents, men and women, that do not want to go there. They don't want to have their families and their reputations dragged through the mud. And I think it kind of discourages good people that don't necessarily have a perfect, squeaky clean background from ever even contemplating running for president, because it's too risky. It's going to be too damaging. Right. And, the one thing you can say for Donald Trump is he doesn't care. Yeah. At least he's out there running. Yeah. And he certainly doesn't have a squeaky clean background. But not too many good people would want to subject themselves to this type of spotlight and scrutiny. So I think we got a lot of would-be great potential candidates for president, leaders of big companies that run multi-billion-dollar companies. They're good with people. They're good with numbers. They're good with policy, but they would not want to go through this.
Sure.
So
it's too much work. Too much work for what they're trying to do. And you really have to... you talk about there's a lot of really good people. What we found, or what I noticed, is having a good business background to lead this country is probably the most essential thing. You think about majority of the presidents were either attorneys or some type of family wealth. And I think Donald Trump's probably the first one to come in with a lot of business background that kind of turn things in the right direction. And then you get another president that, I don't know if his business background is strong as Donald's, but the country's going in another direction now.
Well, you look back at one of our great presidents, Harry S. Truman. Mm-hmm. Harry Truman was simply, he ran a haberdashery, a hat shop. But he was a businessman, to your point. I think that's right. He had some good common sense business background, kind of a bottom line type of guy. And he came into the presidency at a time when the world was, at war and the Second World War. But there you go. Some good common sense business background goes a long way in the White House.
Yeah, I
For
agree.
sure.
It's needed.
Yeah, and I think like also, our people when we're voting, like whether we agree or disagree, but I think sometimes like you notice the shift and just I hate to limit it to two parties, Democrat and Republic, but I think what happens sometimes when there's a need for something, like it doesn't matter. It's like the candidate, right? Like we, maybe when Trump was president, we needed more economic business. I mean, this is just my personal stance on it. Or, hey, we got to kind of get around that because business can be ruthless, right? Like, is there more social programs or, regardless of who believes in climate change or whatever your opinion is on that matter. But it's kind of like what the people and what the masses feel at the time. So I hope that this type of interference doesn't affect with that because regardless of the party, I feel like sometimes the people will kind of vote or they'll swing a different way, right? And maybe they're leaning a little bit more towards the Donald Trump because of what's happening, right? Or, who really knows what the systemic issue? Does it come from, Donald not doing something, now it's affecting us? Or is it because of right, that's, we can all have our personal opinions on that. But I do think at the end of the day, it's like, I hope that we don't get distracted. I think that was a key word about what the real need is in this country, right? Like there's so many wars that we're hearing about, the currency, the whole Saudi Arabia thing, which I want to lead into a little bit, and just we're so focused on that rather than like, what about our trade? I mean, I was even seeing some things about like Mexico, and I know Trump had some different stances with Mexico and the border, but also economic and trade and NAFTA, things like that. But like, you're just looking out there and you're like, to your point, I don't know if that's from a different presidency or from this current presidency, but you kind of see that's like, are we losing our friends as a country? And guess what? Like as Americans, you go to another country, you're usually treated really well or really bad or not, right? They usually hate you because they're jealous. But it's the first time where I feel like there's a target on our back as a country, like Mexico, the BRICS nation, like Brazil. So I hope this distraction doesn't remove us from what we think we need as citizens of this country. And that's where getting caught up with Trump going here or Biden not doing something or doing something, it's like, all right, what is the real issues that we need right now, right?
I think that's a good statement. You could probably say politics is a distraction from reality.
Yeah.
From actually passing laws.
Ding, ding, ding. Somebody won.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So.
Well, so do you want to talk about the petroleum-based situation, petroleum dollar-based situation, and the change in China?
Yeah. So.